The metal chair groaned under Kethvar's weight as he shifted uncomfortably. His dark green shell caught the harsh white lights of the interview room, showing every crack and scar from battles fought 15 years ago. The room smelled of recycled air and fear. At least that's what he told himself the smell was. Fear was easier to handle than memories. Dr. Yuki Tanaka sat across from him, her small human hands folded neatly on the table. She was much smaller than him, like all humans were. Kethvar could have broken her neck with one swipe of his clawed hand. But he had learned long ago that size meant nothing when it came to humans. Nothing at all. "Thank you for agreeing to this interview," Dr. Tanaka said. Her voice was soft, the way humans spoke when they wanted something. "I know this must be difficult for you." Kethvar's mandibles clicked twice. In his language, this meant disagreement. But humans had never learned to understand Vorthak body language properly. They were too busy learning other things. Deadlier things. "You said you wanted to know about the war," Kethvar said. His voice came out rough, like gravel scraping against metal. "You said you wanted both sides of the story." "That's right." Dr. Tanaka nodded. "Humans have written many books about the war, but we've never heard it from a Vorthak perspective. Your perspective?" Kethvar looked around the room. The walls were white and clean. No windows. One door. He had counted 3 security cameras when they brought him in. Standard human design. They always watched, always learned, always remembered. "Why me?" he asked. "You commanded a fleet," Dr. Tanaka said. "You fought in 7 major battles. You survived when most of your kind did not. You saw things that others didn't see." "I saw too much," Kethvar whispered. Dr. Tanaka leaned forward slightly. "Would you like to start from the beginning? First contact?" Kethvar closed his compound eyes. The memories came flooding back like acid in his throat. The pride, the confidence, the terrible, terrible mistakes. "We were strong," he began. "The Vorthak Empire had conquered 17 worlds, 17 different species. We were the best warriors in the galaxy. At least we thought we were." His claws scraped against the metal table, leaving thin scratches. "Our ships were bigger than yours. Our weapons were stronger. Our armor was thicker. We had been fighting wars for 3,000 years. You humans had barely left your home planet." Dr. Tanaka wrote something on her pad. "What did you think when you first heard about humans?" "We thought you were another easy victory," Kethvar said. The words tasted bitter. "The High Command sent scouts to watch your colonies. They reported back that humans were weak, soft. You had small ships and simple weapons. You fought in straight lines like younglings playing war games." He paused, remembering the confidence they had all felt. The Vorthak had a simple way of fighting. They showed up with overwhelming force. The enemy surrendered or died. It had worked 17 times before. "The High Command gave me 3 battle groups," Kethvar continued. 47 ships total. They said it was too many, but I was young and wanted glory. I thought the extra ships would help us finish the war faster." "How many ships did humans have in that sector?" Dr. Tanaka asked. 12, Kethvar said. 12 ships against 47. The odds were impossible. Any sane species would have surrendered immediately. We sent the standard message demanding your immediate submission." "What happened?" Kethvar's shell plates shifted, a sign of deep distress among his people. "Your Commander Park sent back a message. Just 2 words in our language. Come try." Dr. Tanaka stopped writing. "That's all?" "That's all," Kethvar confirmed. 2 words that changed everything. We had never received such a response before. Other species sent long messages begging for mercy or trying to negotiate. But humans just said, "Come try." The old veteran stood up and walked to the far wall. His reflection in the polished metal looked broken and tired. "We thought it was stupidity, bravado. We had no idea it was a promise." "Tell me about the first battle," Dr. Tanaka said gently. Kethvar turned back to face her. "Kepler Station. Your people called it the Battle of Kepler Station. We called it the First Warning. though we didn't understand the warning at the time. Sat back down, the chair creaking again. We arrived in formation. Perfect battle lines just like we had done 17 times before. Our ships were beautiful and terrible. The humans should have been terrified. Were they? No, Kethvar said, quietly. That was our first mistake. We assumed fear worked the same way on humans as it did on everyone else. Fear was supposed to make you surrender. With humans, fear made you fight harder. Dr. Tanaka waited for him to continue. She had learned that silence often brought out more truth than questions. The human ships were already moving when we arrived, Kethvar said. Not away from us, toward us. This made no sense. They were outnumbered 4-1. Their ships were half the size of ours. Any military computer would have told them to retreat. He flexed his claws, remembering the confusion he had felt. I opened communication channels with Commander Park. I wanted to give him one last chance to surrender. I thought I was being merciful. What did he say? He said his people had 3 minutes to finish evacuating the civilians. He asked if we could wait 3 minutes before starting the battle. Kethvar's voice grew quieter. I was so surprised by the request that I actually agreed. It seemed polite. Dr. Tanaka frowned. He was evacuating civilians during a battle. That was our second mistake, Kethvar said. We thought he was just saving lives. We didn't realize he was removing witnesses. Everything that happened next was recorded and broadcast to every human colony in the sector. The old warrior's compound eyes focused on something far away. When the 3 minutes were up, the human ships attacked. Not in formation, not following any military doctrine we had ever seen. They came at us from 12 different directions, like a swarm of angry insects. Did that worry you? No, Kethvar admitted. It looked like chaos. We were trained to fight against organized enemies. This looked like madness. We thought it would be even easier to defeat them. He paused, his mandibles clicking in rapid succession. The first human ship to reach us was Lieutenant Kim's destroyer. It was already damaged from our long-range weapons. Any sane commander would have pulled back for repairs. What did she do? She accelerated, Kethvar said. Instead of retreating, she pushed her engines beyond safe limits and flew straight at our biggest ship. My ship. Dr. Tanaka looked up from her notes. She was trying to ram you? We thought so at first, but ramming attacks never work against Vorthak armor. Our ships are built to survive collisions, so we didn't even try to avoid her. Kethvar's shell darkened, a sign of shame. Lieutenant Kim's ship passed right under us. For a moment, I thought she had lost control. Then I saw what she was really doing. What? She had modified her ship's reactor to explode in a specific pattern. Not just a random explosion, but a shaped charge designed to punch through Vorthak, armor at exactly the right angle. Kethvar's voice grew very quiet. She had studied our ships. She knew exactly where to hit us. Dr. Tanaka stopped writing. How could she know that? That's what we wondered too, Kethvar said. Later we found out that humans had been watching our previous battles. Every single one. They had recordings of every ship we had ever built, every tactic we had ever used. They had been studying us for months before we even knew they existed. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air recycler. Finally, Dr. Tanaka asked, what happened when her ship exploded? My ship survived, barely, Kethvar said. But 2 of our escorts were completely destroyed. Lieutenant Kim's ship was designed to take out exactly 3 ships in exactly the way it did. The explosion wasn't random, it was planned down to the smallest detail. He stood up again, pacing to the wall and back. That's when we realized we weren't fighting 12 ships. We were fighting 12 weapons, each one designed to hurt us in a specific way. Did you retreat? Kethvar made a sound that might have been laughter if laughter could carry pain. Retreat? We were the mighty Vorthak Empire. We had never retreated from anything. Besides, we still had 44 ships left against 11 humans. The numbers were still in our favor. What happened next? The other human ships attacked in pairs. Each pair had a different job. Some carried weapons we had never seen before. Others had equipment that jammed our communications. One pair did nothing but fly around taking pictures of our ships. Dr. Tanaka looked confused. Taking pictures during a battle? We thought it was strange too, Kethvar said. Later we learned that every picture was being sent back to human command centers. They were learning how our ships moved, how our weapons fired, how our shields worked. Even while they were dying, they were learning. The old veteran's voice grew heavy with memory. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it was over, we had won. Technically, we had 38 ships left. The humans had none. Then why do you sound defeated? Kethvar looked directly at Dr. Tanaka. Because we learned something terrible that day. Something that would haunt us for the rest of the war. What did you learn? We learned that humans don't fight to win battles, he said quietly. You fight to win wars. Every human who died at Kepler Station died for a reason. Every ship that was destroyed served a purpose. Dr. Tanaka poured water from a small pitcher into 2 cups. The clear liquid caught the light as she slid 1 cup across the table to Kethvar. The alien warrior stared at it for a long moment before picking it up with careful claws. Human water tastes different, he said after taking a small sip. Cleaner than what we drink on Vorthak Prime. Everything about humans was different, Dr. Tanaka said. Wasn't it? Kethvar set the cup down gently. His compound eyes reflected the room's lights like broken mirrors. Different doesn't describe it properly. You were wrong. Everything about how you fought was wrong. But somehow, wrong worked better than right. He leaned back in his chair, the metal groaning softly. After Kepler Station, the High Command was angry. I had lost 9 ships against an enemy that should have been crushed easily. They wanted explanations. What did you tell them? I told them the truth, that humans fought like no species we had ever encountered, that they were willing to die in ways that made no sense, that they studied us while we killed them. Kethvar's shell plates shifted slightly. The High Command thought I was making excuses for poor leadership. Dr. Tanaka wrote something on her pad. They didn't believe you? Why would they? For 3,000 years, war had followed the same patterns. 2 fleets meet. The stronger fleet wins. The weaker fleet surrenders or dies. Simple, clean, logical. Kethvar's mandibles clicked twice. Humans don't do simple. The old veteran stood and walked to the corner of the room. There was nothing there to look at, but he stared anyway. The High Command sent me reinforcements, 2 more battle groups. They said I obviously needed more ships to handle primitive humans. How many ships did that give you total? 73, Kethvar said without turning around. The largest fleet ever assembled for a single campaign. We could have conquered entire star systems with that many ships. The High Command was taking no chances with their reputation. Dr. Tanaka noticed that his voice had grown quieter. Where did they send you next? The Epsilon sector. 3 human colonies and a military base. Intelligence said the colonies had maybe 20 ships total. Old cargo haulers converted into fighters. Scrap metal with guns bolted on. Kethvar finally turned around. We should have won in hours. Should have? The first colony surrendered immediately, Kethvar said, sitting back down. Just like a normal species should. They sent a message saying they accepted Vorthak rule and asked for mercy. I was relieved. Finally, humans who understood logic. Dr. Tanaka waited for him to continue. We landed troops to secure the colony. Standard occupation procedures. Confiscate weapons. Establish control. Begin cultural integration. Kethvar picked up the water cup again but didn't drink. Everything went perfectly for exactly 6 hours. What happened after 6 hours? The colony exploded, Kethvar said simply. Not the buildings, not the people, the planet itself. Somehow the humans had rigged their entire mining operation to overload. The explosion was visible from orbit. Dr. Tanaka stopped writing. They destroyed their own colony? With themselves? Inside it. Kethvar confirmed. 300,000 humans died instantly, along with 2,000 of my best troops. The surrendering colony had been a trap from the very beginning. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air recycler. Finally, Dr. Tanaka asked, "How did they coordinate something like that?" "We wondered the same thing," Kethvar said. "Later we learned that the colony leaders had known about our approach for weeks. They had time to evacuate anyone who wanted to leave. Everyone who stayed behind had volunteered to die." 300,000 volunteers? 300,000. Weapons, Kethvar corrected. That's how we learned to think about human civilians. Each one was a potential bomb, waiting for the right moment to explode. Dr. Tanaka felt sick. What about the other two colonies? Kethvar's shell darkened. The second colony was different. They didn't surrender, they didn't fight. They just disappeared. Disappeared? When we arrived, the colony was empty. Not abandoned. Empty. As if everyone had simply vanished into thin air. The buildings were intact. The power was still on. There were meals half-finished on tables, but no people anywhere. The old warrior's claws scraped against the table surface. My scouts searched for 3 days. They found no bodies, no signs of struggle, no indication of where 50,000 humans had gone. It was like they had never existed. Did you ever find out what happened? Years later, Kethvar said. The humans had built tunnels, miles and miles of tunnels under their colony, connected to natural cave systems. They had been digging for months, preparing to disappear. Dr. Tanaka frowned. But why? If they could hide, why not just wait for you to leave? Because they weren't hiding, Kethvar said. They were hunting. While we searched the empty colony, they were watching us, learning our patrol patterns, our communication schedules, our supply routes. When they finally attacked, they knew everything about us, and we knew nothing about them. The alien veterans stood and began pacing again. The attack came at night, or what passes for night on that world. 50,000 humans emerged from tunnels all around our base camp. They had been underneath us the entire time. How many soldiers did you lose? All of them, Kethvar said quietly. 5,000 Vorthak warriors dead in less than an hour. The humans had turned the ground itself into a weapon. Everywhere we stepped there were traps. Every shadow hid an enemy. Every tunnel led to an ambush. Dr. Tanaka looked up from her notes. You weren't with them? I was in orbit commanding the fleet, Kethvar said. I watched it all happen through our surveillance drones. I watched my people die one by one, and there was nothing I could do to help them. The room grew quiet again. Outside the space station's rotation brought them around to face a distant star. Its light filtered through the small porthole in the corner. What about the third colony? Dr. Tanaka asked finally. Kethvar sat back down heavily. The third colony was the worst one. They met us in open battle. Ship to ship, like proper warriors. For a moment I thought we were finally fighting an enemy we could understand. What made it worse than the others? Because they fought fairly, Kethvar said, and they still won. Dr. Tanaka looked confused. How is fighting fairly worse? Because it meant they had learned enough about us to beat us at our own game, Kethvar explained. The first colony used tricks. The second colony used stealth. The third colony used pure military skill, and they were better at it than we were. The old warrior's voice grew distant. Commander Park was leading their fleet personally. The same Park from Kepler Station. Somehow he had survived his ship's destruction and taken command of the Colonial Defense Force. How many ships did he have? 18, Kethvar said. Against my 73. But these weren't converted cargo haulers. These were purpose-built warships designed specifically to fight Vorthak fleets. Dr. Tanaka wrote frantically. How could they build new ships so quickly? That's what terrified us, Kethvar said. The ships looked human, but they used Vorthak technology. Our own weapons, our own armor, our own shield systems, but improved. Made better. They had copied your technology? They had perfected it, Kethvar corrected. Every weakness in our designs had been fixed. Every flaw had been eliminated. They had taken our own tools and made them more deadly than we ever could. The alien veteran's compound eyes seemed to lose focus as he remembered the battle. Commander Park's flagship was a perfect replica of a Vorthak dreadnought. Same size, same shape, same basic design, but faster, stronger, smarter. How did they get the technical specifications? From Kepler Station, Kethvar said. Those ships that died taking pictures weren't just watching us fight. They were recording everything. Every weapon signature, every shield frequency, every structural detail. By the time they died, they had learned enough to build better ships than ours. Dr. Tanaka felt a chill. What happened in the battle? We lost, Kethvar said simply. Not barely. Not after a long fight. We lost completely. Commander Park's 18 ships destroyed 60 of my 73 in less than 2 hours. How? They knew exactly what we would do before we did it, Kethvar said. Every tactical manual we had ever written, every strategy we had ever used, every battle plan we had ever made. They had studied all of it and found counters for everything. The old warriors' shell plates shifted again. When I ordered a flanking maneuver, they were already in position to block it. When I tried to concentrate firepower on their flagship, they scattered in a pattern that made our weapons useless. When I attempted to retreat, they had already cut off our escape routes. Did you survive because you retreated? I survived because Commander Park let me go, Kethvar said. At the end of the battle, when I had only 13 ships left, he opened a communication channel. Dr. Tanaka stopped writing. What did he say? He said I could leave, take my remaining ships and go back to Vorthak space. He would not pursue. Kethvar's voice grew very quiet. I asked him why. Why show mercy to an enemy? What was his answer? He said he needed me to carry a message back to the High Command, Kethvar said. He wanted them to know that humans could be reasonable, that we could end the war through negotiation instead of more fighting. Dr. Tanaka frowned. That sounds hopeful. It was a threat, Kethvar said. The lights in the interview room had dimmed slightly, following the space station's artificial day cycle. Dr. Tanaka noticed that Kethvar seemed more comfortable in the softer illumination. His compound eyes reflected less light, and his shell plates had relaxed into a more natural position. You mentioned the Grand Fleet, Dr. Tanaka said, breaking the silence. 300 ships. Kethvar's mandibles clicked softly. The pride of our empire. Every ship captain dreamed of serving in the Grand Fleet. I had commanded one of their battle groups before the war started. But you weren't with them when they went to fight the humans? No, Kethvar said. After my failures in the Epsilon sector, the High Command gave me a different assignment. They sent me to occupy a mining world called Hasol. A punishment detail, they called it. Dr. Tanaka wrote the name down. What made it a punishment? Hasol was supposed to be easy, Kethvar explained. A small planet with maybe 10,000 humans. Miners, farmers, mechanics. No military bases, no warships, no defenses. Just simple people digging rocks out of the ground. The old veteran laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. The High Command thought I couldn't fail at such a simple task. Occupy one small planet with minimal resistance. Keep the humans, working in the mines. Send resources back to the Empire. How many ships did they give you? 5, Kethvar said. Just enough to blockade the planet and land occupation forces. We had done this exact mission on dozens of worlds. It was supposed to take 1 week. Dr. Tanaka looked up from her notes. How long did it actually take? Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The occupation is still going on in my nightmares. The room grew still except for the distant hum of the station's engines. Dr. Tanaka waited patiently for him to continue. We arrived at Hasol on a Tuesday, Kethvar said finally. Local time. The humans had already received news of our approach through their communication networks. Most species would have started evacuating or preparing defenses. What did the humans do? Nothing visible, Kethvar said. The miners kept mining, the farmers kept farming, the mechanics kept fixing equipment. Life continued exactly as it had before we arrived. Dr. Tanaka frowned. That seems normal. That's what we thought, Kethvar said. Normal meant they had accepted their fate. Normal meant easy occupation. We landed 2,000 troops in the main settlement and began establishing control. The alien veteran stood and began his familiar pacing pattern. The first week went perfectly. The humans cooperated with all our orders. They showed us the mine locations, the equipment storage areas, the communication centers. They answered our questions politely and worked their regular shifts. What changed after the first week? Kethvar stopped pacing and turned to face Dr. Tanaka. One of my patrols didn't return from their scheduled route. 6 soldiers gone without a trace. No distress signals. No weapon fire. No signs of struggle. They simply vanished. Did you find them? Eventually, Kethvar said quietly. 3 days later. They were still alive. But they had been buried alive in the mine tunnels. Someone had collapsed the ceiling on top of them while they slept. Dr. Tanaka felt a chill. Who did it? That was the problem, Kethvar said. We couldn't find out. Every human we questioned had perfect alibis. They were all working their shifts, or sleeping in their quarters, or eating in the communal halls. According to our records, no human had been anywhere near that mine tunnel. The old veteran sat back down heavily. I increased patrols. I doubled the guards. I installed surveillance equipment in every building. Nothing helped. Every few days, more soldiers would disappear. Always the same way? Never the same way, Kethvar said. Sometimes they were buried in tunnels. Sometimes they fell into pits that hadn't been there the day before. Sometimes they just walked into the wilderness and never came back. Dr. Tanaka wrote quickly. How many soldiers did you lose? 50 in the first month, Kethvar said. 100 in the second month. By the third month, my troops were too scared to leave their barracks except in large groups. What were the humans doing during all this? Kethvar's shell plates shifted with agitation. Working, always working. They mined their rocks, grew their food, fixed their machines. They were the most productive workforce we had ever occupied. And they were killing my soldiers. The room fell silent as Dr. Tanaka tried to understand what she was hearing. You're saying the same people who were cooperating with you were also attacking you? That's exactly what I'm saying, Kethvar confirmed. And we could never prove which ones. Every human looked innocent. Every human had an excuse. Every human was exactly where they were supposed to be. The alien veteran's compound eyes seemed to lose focus as he remembered. I started having random inspections, surprise, searches of human quarters, interrogations of workers who seemed suspicious, nothing. We never found weapons, never found evidence, never found proof of any resistance activity. But the attacks continued? They got worse, Kethvar said. By the 4th month, we weren't just losing soldiers. Our equipment started breaking down. Vehicles would stop working for no reason. Communication arrays would mysteriously malfunction. Water supplies would become contaminated. Dr. Tanaka looked up from her writing. Sabotage? The most sophisticated sabotage we had ever encountered, Kethvar said. But again, we could never find proof. The human mechanics who fixed our equipment were the same ones who seemed to be breaking it. But we needed them to fix it so we couldn't arrest them. The old warrior stood and walked to the porthole again. The distant star had shifted position as the station rotated. That's when I realized what was really happening on Haysol. What? We weren't fighting an army, Kethvar said. We were fighting a planet. Every rock, every tree, every stream had become our enemy, and the humans were just coordinating it. Dr. Tanaka frowned. I don't understand. Kethvar turned away from the porthole. The miners knew every tunnel on the planet. They could predict exactly where the ground would be weak enough to collapse. The farmers knew every animal, every plant, every weather pattern. They could tell which water sources would make us sick and which paths would lead us into quicksand. What about the mechanics? They understood our equipment better than we did, Kethvar said. Every machine we brought to the planet had been studied, analyzed, and memorized. They knew exactly which part to damage so the machine would fail. In exactly the right way at exactly the right time. The alien veteran sat back down, but he seemed unable to stay still. His claws tapped nervously against the table surface. By the 6th month, my soldiers were having mental breakdowns. They couldn't sleep because they never knew if they would wake up. They couldn't eat because the food might be poisoned. They couldn't use their equipment because it might explode. Did you request reinforcements? Kethvar's mandibles clicked. Twice. 3 times. Each time the High Command sent me more troops. Each time the new soldiers lasted maybe 2 weeks before they started showing the same symptoms as the others. What symptoms? Fear, Kethvar said simply. Pure, constant, overwhelming fear. Fear of the dark because humans attacked at night. Fear of the light because humans attacked during the day. Fear of going out because humans might be waiting. Fear of staying in because humans might be inside already. Dr. Tanaka stopped writing. How many reinforcements did you receive? 6,000 total, Kethvar said. Plus my original 2,000. 8,000 Vorthak soldiers on a planet with 10,000 human civilians. We should have had complete control. But you didn't. We controlled nothing, Kethvar admitted. The humans worked during the day and fought at night, but we could never tell which humans were which. The miner who showed us the tunnels in the morning might be the same person who buried our soldiers in those tunnels that evening. The old veteran's voice grew quieter. The worst part was that they were always polite, always helpful during the day. They would ask about our families back home, bring us food when we looked tired, offer to fix equipment that was broken, and then attack you at night? We assumed so, Kethvar said, but we never caught anyone. Never saw an actual attack happen. Never found a human with weapons or explosives. Our soldiers just kept disappearing and our equipment kept breaking and the humans kept smiling and asking if they could help us with anything. Dr. Tanaka felt a chill run down her spine. How long did this go on? 18 months, Kethvar said. 18 months of constant invisible warfare. By the end, I had maybe 3,000 soldiers left who were still capable of fighting. The others had been transferred to medical facilities for psychological treatment. What ended it? Kethvar looked directly at her. A message from the High Command. The Grand Fleet had been defeated. Vorthak Prime was under siege. All occupation forces were ordered to return home immediately. Did you feel relief? I felt terror, Kethvar said, because I realized that while we were losing our minds on one small mining planet, the humans had been doing the same thing. To us everywhere. Haysol wasn't special. It was the pattern. Dr. Tanaka wrote frantically. The same tactics on every world? Everywhere humans lived, Vorthak soldiers were going insane, Kethvar said. Not from battle, not from wounds, from fear. The gas came at dawn on the 14th day of the siege of Earth. Bextai was in a military hospital in what humans called Geneva when the alarms began screaming. Through the windows, he could see the sky turning an unnatural shade of green. Then, the reports started coming in from around the planet. Biological weapon deployment confirmed in 12 major cities, announced the emergency broadcast system. All civilians in affected areas must immediately seek shelter in sealed environments. Dr. So Jin, who was treating wounded soldiers in the hospital, stopped her work and stared at the reports. They're using plague spores, she said quietly. The bastards are trying to kill the entire planet. Vextai had read about Kethmori biological weapons in his pre-mission briefings. The aliens could release engineered diseases that killed all carbon-based life. It was their standard method for clearing planets they wanted to colonize. No species had ever survived a full-scale biological attack. How long before the spores spread globally? Vextai asked. 72 hours, replied Colonel Yunji, the hospital's military commander. She was checking her weapon and preparing to evacuate the wounded. Maybe less with the wind patterns. Then Earth is lost. Yunji looked at him with the same expression he had seen on so many human faces during the war. Determination mixed with grim acceptance. Maybe. But we're not going down without a fight. The evacuation of the hospital took 6 hours. Wounded soldiers who could barely walk insisted on carrying those who couldn't. Medical staff worked around the clock to prepare patients for transport to underground shelters. No one panicked. No one gave up hope. Vextai found himself in a massive bunker complex beneath the Swiss mountains. Thousands of humans had taken refuge there, along with essential equipment and supplies. The air was filtered and recycled. The walls were meters thick. It should have been safe. But Vextai knew that safety was temporary. The Kethmori spores would eventually find a way in. Then everyone in the bunker would die slowly and painfully. Emergency broadcast from Earth Defense Command announced the bunker's communication system. All surviving military units are to implement Scorched Earth Protocol immediately. Civilian authorities are authorized to use any means necessary to resist enemy occupation. Vextai didn't understand what that meant until Dr. Tae Wan, the bunker's chief scientist, explained it to him. Scorched Earth means we destroy everything, Tae Wan said. He was a thin man with tired eyes, but his hands moved confidently as he worked on his research. If we can't save Earth, we make sure the bugs don't get anything useful from it. But that would mean destroying your own civilization. Better than letting the bugs use our resources to kill other species, Tae Wan replied. Besides, we might have found a way to fight back. For the past week, Tae Wan and his team had been working on something they called the countermeasure. They had taken samples of the Kethmori biological weapons and were trying to create a neutralizing agent. The bug spores are designed to kill carbon-based life, Tae Wan explained as he worked. But they're also living organisms themselves, which means they can be killed. It was a desperate gamble. Human science was centuries behind the Kethmori. But they had advantages the aliens didn't expect. They were creative. They were desperate, and they were very, very angry. The first results came back positive. Tae Wan's team had created a virus that attacked the Kethmori spores, but it was unstable and difficult to mass produce. We need more time, Tae Wan admitted to the bunker. Commander General Jae-hyun. At least another week to perfect the formula. We don't have a week, General Jae-hyun replied. He was looking at reports from the surface. The bugs are preparing for a full planetary assault. They want to finish this quickly. That's when the volunteers came forward. Lieutenant Eunji was the first. I'll take the prototype to the surface, she announced. Test it in real conditions while you continue working. The prototype has a 60% chance of working, Tae Wan warned, and a 40% chance of making the situation worse. Then, I guess we'll find out which one it is, Eunji replied with a grim smile. 12 more volunteers joined her. They called themselves the Guinea Pig Squad. Their mission was simple: get to the surface, deploy the prototype countermeasure, and hope it worked. Vextai watched them prepare for what was almost certainly a suicide mission. They checked their equipment, said goodbye to friends, and wrote letters to family members they might never see again. But they didn't hesitate. They didn't doubt. They just did what needed to be done. Why? Vextai asked Eunji as she loaded the prototype device into her transport pack. Because if we don't try, everyone dies, she replied. At least this way we have a chance. The squad departed through a secret tunnel that led to the surface. Vextai watched their progress on the bunker's monitors. They moved through a landscape that looked like the end of the world. The sky was green with poison. Dead plants covered the ground. Nothing lived in the open air. But the humans kept moving. They reached their target, an old weather station on a mountain peak. From there, they could deploy the countermeasure into the upper atmosphere, where the winds would spread it across the continent. The deployment went perfectly. The device activated and began releasing Taiwan's virus into the poisoned air. Within hours, the green tint began to fade from the sky. It's working, Taiwan announced to the bunker. The countermeasure is destroying the Kethmori spores. But the victory came at a cost. 8 members of the Guinea Pig Squad died from exposure to the biological weapons. Lieutenant Eunji barely made it back to the tunnel before collapsing. She spent 3 days in critical condition before recovering. Was it worth it? Vextai asked her as she recuperated. Ask me again when we win the war, she replied. The countermeasure spread across Earth in 72 hours. The Kethmori biological weapons were neutralized. The planet's atmosphere cleared. Humans began emerging from their shelters to find their world scarred but still livable. But the war was far from over. The Kethmori fleet was still in orbit, and now they were angry. "They're preparing for ground assault," reported the orbital monitoring station. 47 landing sites across 6 continents, estimated enemy strength, 15 million warriors. General Jae Hyun studied the tactical displays. Earth's remaining military forces numbered less than 2 million soldiers. The civilians could fight, but they were poorly equipped and inadequately trained. "We're outnumbered 7-1, he announced to his staff. "Conventional tactics won't work." That's when the humans did something that shocked even Vexatai. They stopped fighting like a civilized species and started fighting like humans. The new strategy was called asymmetric warfare. Small groups of humans would attack Kethmori, supply lines, communication centers, and command posts. They would strike quickly and disappear before the aliens could respond. They would use guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and psychological warfare. "We're not trying to beat them in open battle," explained Major Dong Jun, the officer coordinating the resistance cells. "We're trying to make them afraid to leave their landing zones." The strategy worked better than anyone expected. Human fighters operating in small groups began picking off isolated Kethmori patrols. They sabotaged alien equipment with improvised explosives. They attacked at night when the aliens were most vulnerable. More importantly, they began targeting the Kethmori hive mind network itself. "The bugs communicate through bioelectric pulses," explained Dr. Taewon. "If we can disrupt those signals, we can isolate individual aliens from the hive mind." Human scientists had learned to build jamming devices that interfered with Kethmori communications. When isolated from the hive mind, the aliens became confused and ineffective. They stopped working as a coordinated force and became just very large, very dangerous animals. The first successful hive mind disruption occurred in what used to be Tokyo. A human resistance cell activated their jamming device during a major Kethmori assault. The alien forces immediately fell into chaos. Individual warriors wandered aimlessly, unable to coordinate with their fellows. The human counterattack was swift and brutal. They destroyed 3,000 confused Kethmori in less than an hour. "Impossible," Vextai breathed as he watched the battle reports. "Nothing's impossible," replied Captain Sang-ho, the officer assigned to protect Vextai. "Difficult, yes. Costly, definitely. But not impossible." Sang-ho had been fighting the Kethmori for 4 years. He had lost 2 fingers and most of his hearing to alien weapons. But he was still fighting, still finding new ways to hurt the enemy. "The bugs made a mistake," Sang-ho continued. "They assumed we were just another primitive species they could intimidate. They never considered that we might adapt faster than they could respond." Over the following weeks, the tide of battle began to turn. Human resistance cells, armed with hive mind jammers and countermeasures to biological weapons, began pushing the Kethmori back. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't predict or control. For the first time in their species' history, the Kethmori began to retreat. "They're pulling back to their landing zones," reported Orbital Command. "Several hive ships are preparing to depart." Vextai couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Kethmori, the unstoppable conquerors of the galaxy, were running away from a primitive species with crude weapons. The emergency session of the Galactic Military Institute had been called within hours of the consortium disaster. Representatives from every major military power in known space gathered in the secure chambers of New Geneva Station, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear, confusion, and desperate curiosity. Admiral Trenkala of the Zephyrian Defense Force activated the holographic display at the center of the room. Images of the destroyed orbital platform filled the air, twisted metal and debris that had once been the most advanced military installation in the sector. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," she said, her blue skin pale with stress. 5 humans defeated a force of 300 corporate soldiers equipped with the best technology money can buy. This isn't just an isolated incident anymore. It's a pattern that threatens the fundamental assumptions of galactic warfare. Around the table, military leaders from a dozen species shifted uncomfortably. They had all received reports from their Intelligence services. Stories that seemed impossible until they were backed up by sensor recordings and survivor testimony. General Moxavar of the Helion Imperial Marines stood up, his cybernetic implants glowing as he accessed classified files. My analysts have completed their review of every recorded engagement between human special forces and conventional military units. The results are disturbing. New holographs appeared, showing battle statistics and casualty reports. Numbers that made no sense according to established military doctrine. In 43 separate encounters over the past 18 months, human special forces units have achieved a 100% mission success rate. Average human casualties per engagement, 0.7 personnel. Average enemy casualties, 78% of deployed forces. The silence in the room was absolute. These numbers suggest combat effectiveness levels that exceed our best theoretical models. Moxvar continued. Either our intelligence is completely wrong about human capabilities, or we're facing something unprecedented in galactic military history. Admiral Nexthol of the Consortium Defense Fleet activated his own display. I was present during the Kepler 442b operation. I watched a single human infiltrator disable an entire orbital platform using nothing but salvaged equipment and improvised tactics. She moved through our security systems like they didn't exist. The image showed Sung's infiltration route through the platform. Impossible paths through ventilation systems too small for most species. Security blind spots that shouldn't have existed. Guard rotations that had been predicted and exploited with surgical precision. The technical analysis is even more troubling, Nexthol said. Their equipment shows no advanced technology. Standard human military gear, some of it decades old. Modified alien components that should be incompatible with human physiology. Yet somehow they achieve results that our best specialists cannot explain. Colonel Vashton of the Mantoid Hive Guard clicked her mandibles nervously. My people have always prided themselves on being the galaxy's premier hunters. We can track prey across light years and survive in any environment. But humans, they hunt us. She activated recordings from the Titan 7 incident. Grainy footage showed human soldiers moving through ice caves that should have been uninhabitable. Their equipment was clearly inadequate for the conditions, yet they thrived while professional mantoid hunters died around them. They don't just adapt to hostile environments, Vashton said. They master them. They turn our own hunting grounds against us. We've lost 3 entire scout companies trying to track human units. The survivors always report the same thing. Humans who seem to know what we were going to do before we did it. The meeting continued for hours as military leaders shared their experiences and fears. Stories of human units appearing without warning in supposedly secure facilities. Battles that followed no recognizable tactical doctrine yet achieved impossible results. Equipment that worked in ways that violated known laws of physics. But the most disturbing reports came from the psychological warfare specialists. Dr. Kethmar of the Delphinian Naval Intelligence displayed brain scans from captured alien soldiers who had fought human forces. The neurological damage is unlike anything we've seen before. These subjects show trauma patterns consistent with encountering something their minds cannot process. The scans revealed alien brains literally rewiring themselves to avoid memories of human encounters. Neural pathways shutting down to prevent psychological breakdown. In some cases, entire memory centers had been damaged by experiences too traumatic to integrate. Human psychological warfare doesn't just defeat enemy morale, Kethmar explained. It fundamentally changes how alien minds process combat situations. Survivors become incapable of fighting effectively against any enemy, not just humans. The fear spreads through military units like a plague. Admiral Trenkala called for order as the discussion threatened to spiral into panic. We need practical solutions, not just analysis. What are our options for dealing with this threat? The responses revealed the depth of alien military thinking, overwhelming firepower, superior technology, numerical advantages, all the traditional approaches that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia. But General Zareth of the Vorgan Cybernetic Corps had studied the problem more deeply. Conventional approaches have already failed. The question is why? What makes Human special forces different from every other military unit in known space? He activated a comparative analysis showing human tactics versus standard alien military doctrine. The differences were stark and revealing. Most galactic species follow predictable patterns in warfare, establish superiority through technological or numerical advantages, control key terrain and resources, eliminate enemy forces through direct confrontation. These strategies have been refined over thousands of years of interstellar conflict. The display shifted to show human tactical approaches. Humans ignore these patterns entirely. They use mobility instead of static defense. They treat every element of the battlefield as a potential weapon. Most importantly, they study their enemies and adapt their methods in real time. New images appeared showing human units modifying their equipment mid-battle. Weapons reconfigured for specific alien vulnerabilities. Communication systems hacked and turned against their operators. Environmental hazards weaponized through creative application of basic physics. But the most significant difference, Zareth continued, is psychological. Other species fight to achieve military objectives. Humans fight to win. The distinction may seem minor, but the implications are profound. He showed recordings of human soldiers continuing to fight, despite injuries, that would incapacitate most aliens. Tactical decisions that prioritized mission success over personal survival. A willingness to sacrifice individual advantages for team effectiveness that seemed almost pathological to alien observers. They don't just accept casualties, Zareth said quietly. They use them. Wounded humans become more dangerous, not less. Cornered humans become unpredictable. Outnumbered humans become creative. Every disadvantage becomes a tool for victory. The implications sank in slowly. The alien military leaders were confronting a fundamental truth that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. Humans didn't fight like any other species in the galaxy. They fought like something entirely new. Recommendations? Admiral Trenkala asked. The responses were unanimous and disturbing. Avoid direct confrontation at all costs, General Moxvar said. Human special forces are too small and mobile for conventional detection methods, too adaptable for standard countermeasures, too unpredictable for effective tactical planning. Implement exclusion protocols, Colonel Vashton added. Any system with confirmed human special forces presence should be classified as off-limits for military operations. The risk of engagement is too high. Redirect military research toward defensive measures, Dr. Kethmar suggested. Focus on detection and avoidance rather than confrontation. We need to know where they are so we can stay away from them. The final recommendations were compiled into a classified document that would reshape military thinking throughout the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, an entire class of warfare was being abandoned not because it was ineffective, but because the enemy was too dangerous to fight. Within weeks, the new protocols spread through military academies and training centers across known space. Young officers learned about human special forces the way previous generations had learned about natural disasters. Something to be anticipated, prepared for, and avoided at all costs. But the changes went deeper than military doctrine. The galactic balance of power was shifting as corporations and governments realized that humans could protect anything they chose to defend. Trade routes changed to avoid systems with human presence. Mining operations were abandoned rather than risk human interference. Entire sectors of the economy reorganized around the simple fact that humans meant business. In the criminal underworld, the lesson was simpler and more direct. The old Thraxian in his cantina booth had seen the writing on the wall months ago. Smart criminals stayed away from anything involving humans. Desperate ones made excellent examples for the next generation of mercenaries. Captain Kwan and his team received new orders within days of the Kepler 442b operation. Another planet needed protection. Another native species required human guardianship.